Hello, we're so excited because we have Nishita Parekh here with us today with her debut book. Um, it's a kind of a neat looking book, The Night of the Storm, a kind of a thriller and also a family drama, I am calling it. But we're glad she could include us in her tour of virtual things. She's been doing a lot of physical things down in Texas. Are you tired yet, Nishita?
It's definitely challenging because I also have a 2-year-old. So kind of, I've kept my travel local. I'm not flying out anywhere. I'm just driving out and then coming back home.
There you go. Good way to do it. And sometimes for writers, because they are sort of not withdrawn, loners kind of, or quiet people, just being around people and crowds and doing that is very tiring. So I can imagine how you're feeling. When did you start doing your little tour?
So I've been going on and off on events since publication. So that was in January. So I try to like space out these events, but I've been doing them for almost 3 to 4 months now. I did a spot on, a little local TV channel. That was cool. Got to see a TV studio. So it's been a fun experience. And I'm glad to be doing, events like these two, where I can there's more intimacy when you can connect with people
Yeah, it
this way.
is. There is intimacy with it. That's one of the things I like. And one of the things I like about Zoom, of course, is being able to have you with us because we get people from, well, sometimes in some of the meetings and stuff that I Zoom with for people here, we get folks from the coast and outlying communities. So it really is a convenient thing, although it's not quite the same thing as meeting in person, of course. But well, I'm kind of curious. You said you were born in Mumbai, and when did you come to the States with your family?
Yeah. So, first of all, thank you, Linda, for giving me this opportunity. Really happy to be talking to you all today. I was born and raised in Mumbai, and my love of reading started with in my childhood when my parents would, take me to libraries on my summer vacations.
Mhm.
And then I came to the United States for my bachelor's degree in computer science. I did that when I was like a teenager because I wanted to get into writing as a profession, but then my dad was like, you need to get a stable job first, learn how to pay your bills, follow your dreams later. So kind of put that on standby, my writing dreams on standby for a while and just went into technology. I lived in New York for 3 or 4 years, then moved down to Texas. And even though I had a full-time job working in technology, that itch to write was always there. So I would do a little bit of writing here and there during my weekends. And, that kind of went off from there. I do have a question for the audience, though. How many of y'all in the audience are writers or aspiring writers? Awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah, and you don't have to be published or even agented to call yourself a writer. So just give yourself permission to call yourself a writer. If you're trying to write, if you're finding time to write your stories, you're a writer. It's just a matter of time. That would be my first advice.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a good point. Um, Let me see. I'm kind of curious. When did you start writing? You were always kind of writing. From what age did you start?
So I started writing, I would say, in my late 20s, but I just started writing, short stories, and I would try to get feedback. I would submit my short stories for publication in online magazines. Then I started writing novels, but obviously the first couple of ones were really bad and they were not going to be published at all, but that's okay. That's part of the process. And then when I experienced Hurricane Harvey myself in 2017, that experience gave me the idea of setting a thriller, around a hurricane, because I don't think that's been done before. And it took 7 years from when I had that idea to when I got published. So for
Oh,
all you writers in the audience, it's normal, completely normal to take a long time. Every publishing journey I feel is very long and, it's rewarding in the end, but it does take time and patience, and that's absolutely okay. Even if you don't, write every day, as long as you keep coming back to it, you will get there eventually.
you're so encouraging.
Yeah.
Proud to have. That's nice. That's nice. I'm kind of wondering how you chose to write a thriller. I know it's part family drama too, because it's a wonderful idea. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about um, the storyline. Of course, a lot of us haven't read it yet. I haven't finished. I don't want any spoilers because it's kind of tense and exciting. So maybe you can tell us kind of what's going on in the book.
Yeah, so the book is about a family that's trapped in a house during hurricane, and then someone gets murdered. Like that's the elevator pitch for the novel.
Uh-huh.
And it's like Agatha Christie, uh, you know, she was the queen of these locked room thrillers. So hopefully it's a fresh take on that genre. And like I said, in 2017, I was stuck in my apartment during Hurricane Harvey, and I was safe, but I was on the second story. So I couldn't go anywhere, and had a bunch of family members living nearby who were homeowners, and they were asked to evacuate. So they ended up coming over to my place to ride out the storm. So at one point, we were like 5 adults, 2 kids, crammed in this tiny space. We could hear rescue choppers flying overhead. We could see boats on the streets of Houston. So it was a pretty crazy time. But spoiler alert, nobody in my family got murdered. Feel like I should call that out. They're all lovely people. I made sure to thank each and every one of my family members in my acknowledgements. Like, please still love me. This is not based on y'all. But that experience kind of gave me that idea. And since in Indian culture, family is very important, so it made sense that, in this fictional family, people would be kind of hunkered down together. And I think after the pandemic, we all know that if you spend too much time with your family, some drama is going to happen. So there is tons of family drama in this book.
Yeah, it's wonderful. You're a very good writer, by the way. I have to say that. I mean, I read a lot of books, and some of them are real clunkers, but this was really great. So thank you for that because it makes it a joy to read. But I think I was trying to think if I had any more. Oh, I know there was one other question. Was because you moved here from another culture, um, were can you describe whether there was any kind of cultural shock involved when you moved or like that or not?
Mhm. Yeah, so there was definitely a lot of culture shock because, India and living here in America as a woman, especially, it's a completely different experience. I feel like women have more freedom here. Uh, you have more opportunities here. I don't know if you all know this, but in India, there is a law which does not allow medical professions to disclose the baby, like the gender of a fetus to the mom and dad. So there's a law. So these gender parties that we have here, right? We don't have them in India because in India, if the parents find out that the baby that they're going to have is a girl, they are less likely to want to continue with the pregnancy. I mean, that is just such a sad fact that we've accepted as a country in India that being born a woman is just, a handicap almost, right? Like the parents would rather not have a child than have a girl. So to come from that kind of thinking to a place
I think I'm frozen.
you're
Keep going, because just ignore me.
given, at least there is a, hear me, right?
Yeah, just keep
Okay,
going if
awesome.
I disappear.
Okay. Yeah, and now that I've spent most of my adult life here, I think I'll have a harder time adjusting if I have to, go vacation back because now I'm like more, used to the way things work here. So definitely a culture shock, but a good learning experience. And I think my book captures that feeling because a
Yeah,
lot of
I
immigrants, when they move here, right,
I
they have
felt
to
there was
decide.
that family dynamic is definitely shows up in the book. Yeah. The father in there. Yeah, Patrick, go ahead.
Did you meet your husband in the United States, or did you know him from India?
No, I met him right here in Texas. So we had both moved from different parts of India, but we didn't know each other back then. So we just met in Texas through friends, and that's how I, yeah, met my husband.
Kind of like
I was,
an Indian community in Texas that where you would that won't be more likely to run into each other that way.
yeah. So we have a lot of cultural events that happen, right? And for all of these events, you have people who come together to celebrate festivals like Diwali, for example. So
Mhm.
during those festivals, you kind of come to know more Indian people, folks that live in your community. It's a good thing because when you're new in a country, it's good to have that support, but it's a bad thing because this is the same community that kind of puts pressure on women to stay, married in unhappy marriages for the sake of society. Your community will kind of ostracize you if you're getting a divorce or something. So there are pros and cons to the community aspect.
Yeah, Elena,
Yes.
you need to unmute. Or
I have a question connected to that. Um, from your point of view, uh, people come here to the United States to kind of have a new life and forget those very tough laws against women or some other kinds. But then they get into a community together and then they want to enforce those laws. Do I understand it right? And
Yes,
if
yes.
yes, then why do you think it's happening? And is it possible kind of to stop it and change it?
Yes, so definitely, I think the problem is that you take part of your culture with you wherever you go, right? So even if you're leaving the country, the mindset that you have that has been ingrained for generations, that's not going to get wiped out in an instant, right? So this is a problem more for the people who've spent majority of their lives back in India and then they're coming to a new country, and there's so much change that it's hard to just let go of everything that you've known your entire life and just accept a new way of life. So there's this tendency to hold on to the past. But I think the solution to that is with the newer generation, with more education opportunities among women. All the change has to come from women because we're the mothers, right? So if we raise sons who do not believe in the patriarchy, then I have hope for the future generations for sure.
Okay, thank you.
I know the United States is touted as supposedly a melting pot, okay? The idea being that whether or not we're offering new lives or whatever to people, that it be a place where people can learn from each other, cultures can share and learn about each other. What would you say, maybe, Nishita, are the strong things about the Indian culture that you would like to see
Definitely.
in?
So how many of y'all in the audience are moms or grandmas? Okay, awesome. A lot of them. Okay. So one thing that I really wish the United States would learn from other cultures is how to give support to mothers. Like it takes a village to raise a kid, but that village does not exist here. In America, you have this concept of, oh, if there's a mom, she's a stay-at-home mom, then it's expected that she's going to be with the child all day and, that's her job and she doesn't have to do anything else, so she should just dedicate her entire life. That's not the right way to live. Like you should not be spending 24 hours just taking care of a child. You need a village. It takes support, and we don't have any of that here. Even working women have it difficult, right? Because the cost of childcare is so expensive that for most women, half the salary would just go into childcare expenses. I'm learning all of this because I'm now a working mom in corporate America. And oh my God, ever since I've had my kid, asked myself, why does it have to be so hard here when, countries with half the resources than this country are able to give their moms, a better life? I had a cousin who had a baby around the same time as me, and I was back on my job in 3 months, even though I was getting like barely any sleep at night. And I asked my manager for unpaid leave, but he said I should, be grateful I have a job or something. We don't have paid maternity leave, right? And my cousin back in India, she was able to afford a nanny. She had a cook who could come in and, make meals for the baby and the mom. And then she could hire someone like a doula to give postpartum massages to the mom. And I was like, what heaven is this? So the problem here is that we don't have like a community for moms. And the second thing is that we don't have affordable domestic help that's very much needed for working families. You need to have domestic labor that's cheaper, that's affordable to all families. I can see moms nodding. I'm sure all the moms have had a very hard time.
It's an interesting topic, something we can all think about, you know, and kind of keep on the watch for. I think it's been an issue here for a long time. Women have talked about needing things to be able to go out. I know during certain kinds of well, when school, for instance, in the summer when there's no school, then the kids are supposed to be, at home, and or if they get a little bit older, they can go out on their own sometimes. But still, there's this like 9 months of life being a certain way, and then there's this other 3 months where it changes, and it really can play havoc with anybody's budget, even if they do have, uh, the opportunity to pay for that. It just totally changes worse in the summertime. And that's when people want to go on vacations. And anyway, we could go on forever probably about these kinds of things, but um it's a thriller. And you I have to tell everybody, you kind of warned me up front because you said, yeah, it's a mystery, it's a thriller, but I got to tell you, it's got a lot of family in there. Do you have concerns about it having so much family backstory to the mystery, or?
For me, the having the backstory was important because to me, for a murder mystery, I'm not so much interested in the mechanics of it. I'm more interested in answering the question of why would a person be compelled to murder another human being? And hopefully, once you have all the character backstory, that answers the problem. My concern is more that as writers, you have no control over how the book is marketed. So if they choose to slap a label of, a hardcore thriller, this is a thriller, because thrillers make more money, then it sets up the wrong expectations for readers, and, that kind of backfires on the author. But that's something that's out of our control.
Well,
So
as far as I'm concerned, it's a good story. And you can talk about your family or the fictional family, of course, fictional, as much as you want. But, everybody can go ahead and throw questions, and, just there's not too many of us. So
I have a question. How much of yourself and or your family have you written into this story?
So definitely there are a lot of parts of myself because the main character is a mom. And I started writing this story when I was single. Now my baby is 2 years old. That tells you all how long it takes to publish a novel. But when I sold this book, my baby was 3 months old. So I was barely getting any sleep. I feel like the book should come with a disclaimer. Parts of this were produced by a sleep deprived brain. And so I think the mother in the book, definitely it has parts of me because I made the protagonist like more tired because that's how I felt most of the time, waking up at 4 a.m. to get the writing done. But I also feel like the bond between the mother and the son in the book became stronger because I was feeling that unconditional love myself for the first time. Whereas the family members are concerned, they're not based on specific people, but they're more like universal patterns that I have seen. Like there's a character grandma in the book, and she's at that age, as you get older, and I've experienced this myself too, as you get older, you care less about what people think. And in her case, the filters between her mouth and her brain have like completely disappeared. So she just says whatever she wants. So she was, yeah, I was inspired to write her based on, some of the older relatives that I have, but it's not based on specific person. But yes, one does draw inspiration from real life people. So for the writers in the audience, what genres are you guys working on, or what stage are y'all at?
Can I just stop for a second? Michelle had a question she wanted to ask.
Yeah, I'll ask the question and then I'll answer yours. I haven't read your book. It looks great and I look forward to reading it. It sounds really fun. And I wondered if you have another book like it or a different book that's in the works. And then to answer your question, I have a self-published book that's a humorous memoir about living with horses, and I write poetry, and I'm trying to figure out what kind of poet I want to be.
Oh, nice. That sounds great. So are you trying to get an agent now for your next book, or for...
The kind of book I'm writing, and I write a diverse bunch of stuff. I blog on all kinds of topics. I don't think I'm ripe for an agent because it's not fiction and it's not
right.
not going to be super popular, probably.
Gotcha. But yeah, self-publishing is a great model if you want more control over the creative process, and it definitely works out for some people. And I've seen like people, just a tip, if you want to publicize your poetry or your book, I've seen people start Substacks, which is like a new thing. It's like the new blogging thing. So if you create a Substack and if you get enough followers, then eventually that could lead to
Yeah,
sales
I've been
down the
looking
road.
at Substack too, so thanks.
Cool. To answer your question, right now I'm in the thick of promoting this book, and it's really hard to do that because I also have a full-time job, because I'm not, I'm never going to trust publishing to be my primary source of income. So I'm definitely keeping my job. So there's no balance in my life right now. There's just chaos. I've learned to embrace the chaos. Hopefully once the promotion activity for this book dies down, I will work on the next one. Might have something to do with technology and motherhood, but we'll see. Thank you.
Thanks.
How about you, Ellie? Would you having trouble with something?
Yeah, sorry, I was just having some issues with it was telling me the network wasn't working very well, sorry. I was actually going to ask though, so what made you choose traditional publishing over self-publishing? What were the benefits?
Yeah, so again, I'm not going to say one model is better than the other, because it just depends on what type of publishing journey you want to pursue. For me, I wanted to try traditional publishing because I'm an introvert. I can do the writing part, but I didn't want to take over the advertising of it. I have a very poor design sense, so I wouldn't be able to create a good cover for the book. I wanted to kind of pass that off to the experts. So that's why I chose a traditional publishing path. So it really depends. If you have that, spirit of kind of going all the way and, being involved in all parts, and it is hard if you're going self-publishing, you have to make sure you have a good independent editorial overview of the book, right? Because there are so many of them on Amazon. You have to control what the cover looks like, and this is sad, but we do judge a book by its cover, is what I've learned. Like if your cover stands out, amongst all the ones in the marketplace, it can give you a leg up. So things like this, which are very important, if you would rather have someone else take care of them, then traditional publishing is the route to go. But it is difficult, and it's definitely, the path to publishing is paved with rejections, but that's completely okay. My book was rejected by, I think, 5 or 6 agents, and that's who requested the full manuscript, but it still went down to sell at auction, right? And aspiring writers, we tend to think that, oh, as soon as I get an agent, I'll feel successful. And then it becomes, as soon as I sell my book, I'll feel successful. But the truth is, that you're going to get rejected at any point in the publishing process, right? You could get a literary agent, but then your book may not sell. Your book may sell, but then your book may flop. So you could even be rejected by, readers or trade publications. So you just have to create a very, very thick skin, take a very thick skinned approach to the process and just take all the rejections in stride.
So how is your book selling?
So, I mean, I compared, is it a Stephen King type of selling book? No, it is
No.
not. But compared to what
So
a debut book can sell,
your expectations, maybe.
yeah. So yes, so publishing has taught me to be a glass half full kind of person, because if you go into that mindset of, comparing yourself, then you're never going to be
No.
happy in publishing, because there's always somebody who's better than you. For me, I feel like it has surpassed all my expectations, because my book landed on the USA Today bestseller list the week it debuted. And for someone like me who's South Asian, writing a book about this Indian family, the fact that, so many people in the country gave this a chance, it means a lot to me. And for me, the biggest, asset has been connecting with readers like yourselves, and hearing from people who love the insights into a different culture, or hearing from Indian people who enjoyed seeing themselves represented in mainstream fiction. Like, those have been the most rewarding parts of this whole journey, more than the numbers. And I have found that libraries are wonderful. The book is out there in like 700 libraries now. So I encourage, if y'all want to read the book, you don't even have to spend your hard-earned money on it. Just request your local library to have a copy. That'll create a sale for me, and I don't feel bad for you spending your money if you don't like the book. So go ahead and just do that if this has been helpful to you.
So another question, how did you come to our group here? Because we're so small, in a small city, very far away from Houston and USA Today, and all of a sudden you're here with 5 more people, mostly self-publishers. What is your interest, or why would you want to do this? It's great, and thank you. We're really honored to have you, but I'm kind of interested.
Yeah, so when I was a writer myself, I used to attend a lot of virtual events with other authors, and it was really inspiring to see someone who's published. So part of this is just me paying it forward. Hopefully you can see me and see the number of years I've put in, and that gives you a little bit of belief that yes, it can happen for you too, because somebody did that to me. A lot of published authors gave me the encouragement to not give up. That's one. And this group I found out, I think, through a Google search or something. I was looking for like mystery book clubs in the area, and Google, gave me like a nationwide list. So I thought that this group might be interested in this type of novel. And Linda has been amazing. She took no time in setting this up. So thank you, Linda, for that. So Ellie, what are you working on? Are you trying to get a book?
Yes, I am interested in writing. I am interested mostly in fiction, maybe a little bit of fantasy as well. And I actually really love illustration as well. So when you were talking about design, that was actually helpful for me, because I've really thought about that. And for me, it's like a question of, I want more control maybe over the final product, like illustration wise, or like maybe cover design wise. And you don't get as much choice with that in traditional publishing. And yet I know there's certain benefits to traditional publishing with marketing. And I do have a little bit of marketing in my background, so I've thought that that might just be wiser for me to go that route. But it is something that I thought about. So I really appreciate you sharing that. That was very kind, and I appreciate you paying it forward.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, you do have some control over the cover. Even in
Mhm.
traditional publishing, they do give you like a bunch of options, and they present like different type of images, and they ask you to pick one. So you have some control, but ultimately it is their call, and because they have all these salespeople who know what all gets published, right? So it's kind of weird. The book has to stand out from the different books, but it also has to match what's already out there. So it's a tricky balance. But yeah, good luck with your writing.
Thank you so much.
Crystal has had her hand up now forever. And
Sorry.
so she's very polite, you see.
It's all good. There's a lot of interesting conversation going on. I was just going to ask you, what's your favorite part of writing that particular book? I mean, what was your favorite part, I guess?
Mm, I guess my favorite parts were,
Mm.
uh, I'm trying to think. It's been how many years? I stopped working on this about 3 years ago. It's the favorite parts. I think Grandma was one of my favorite characters to write because with her, I could just, she says whatever she wants. And she kind of, if you read the book, you would know that she gives the daughters in law a little bit of a difficult time. So it was funny for me to kind of write in the voice of that character. And I also enjoyed writing about motherhood because at that time, I was like in the thick of it. I was nursing my baby and everything, so all the complaints that I had about motherhood kind of made their way in the book. I think that was therapeutic for me. There's a paragraph in there about the main character having a C-section after 40 hours of labor. Guess who had that? Me. And I was like,
Oh, wow.
well, my husband is tired of hearing my labor story. Now I'm just going to put it down for everybody to read it. So those
Right
parts were
here,
fun.
read this. Yeah, great.
It's cute.
Patrick,
I have a character development question, but I need to provide a little backstory to explain it. It just so happens in my writing group back in DC, an Indian American female who had a son and was divorced and had a scary father was part of that group. The story she was writing was, I would say, a fictionalized version of her life. She was born and raised in India, married her husband there, moved to the United States, and he became a terror. Now, he was a terror before, but he became a greater terror in the United States, where women are encouraged to be independent, or at least stand up for themselves, and he didn't like that. So they eventually divorced, but he became very scary. And there was every month the debate in the writing group was, should the ex-wife kill the ex-husband or not? Now, in your story, you have a scary ex-husband, but you don't have an ex-husband. How did you develop that character?
Uh, that's a great question, and I hope your friend is doing okay.
So far, it's been a few years. I moved quite a while ago, but
Okay, yeah, because like I said before, divorce can be hard in that culture. I mean, the divorce rate in India is like less than 1%. And that does not mean that they've magically cracked the code of making marriages work. It just means that people are staying in unhappy marriages. So for me, some of my closest friends are single moms. So I kind of used them as references to develop all the characters. And like I said, I was single when I started writing this book. So because I had these single moms as references, I was able to see up close just how hard it is to raise a child by yourself. And especially as a single mom in a society where there's very little support for moms, I was able to see the challenges that they have. And I was able to see the toxic communications that they have with their exes. So kind of had some insight into that experience. So I was able to bring that into my character.
Mm.
So are you also working on a novel or?
I'm actually working on a thriller right now. I've written YA, comedic YA, a rom-com, a murder mystery, and now it's a thriller.
Awesome.
But I think it's wandering a bit, so I need to make it a little bit more of a thriller.
all in one book, Patrick, or are these different?
Oh no, they're all different.
Okay. I thought maybe you said you were wandering. I thought maybe you were wandering in this book all through.
No, but the story is wandering a bit.
There you go. Okay.
I need to batten it down.
Okay. If you're looking for feedback on your book, there are a lot of writing contests that happen. I was able to get a freelance editor to work for free on my novel because I submitted it as part of a revision pit. It's called REVPIT. It's, I think, an annual contest, and they ask you to submit your opening pages. And if the editor likes it, then you can get to work with them. And sometimes having a set of outside eyes, especially a professional editor, can be really helpful because they can help you see like the big picture thing, right? We as writers, we kind of sometimes get lost in our at the sentence level, right? Like, oh, does this paragraph work? It's hard to step back and see the whole picture when you've worked on it for years. So it helps to get a fresh perspective from an editor.
I appreciate that. And it's a little scary for everyone who's written a book. I'm a 5 to 7 draft writer, and this is the second draft. So I'm reluctant to get it in front of anyone until it's maybe 4th draft.
Yeah, that happens. Yeah, the first drafts are just to stream of consciousness, get it out, see what's worth keeping, and I think that's a normal process for writers. Yeah.
Thank you, though.
So I have another question. You had several rejections from the publishing companies that you sent your book to. And how did you select who to choose to send your book to? Or you just sent it to whoever?
Yeah, so the good thing is that, when you're getting a book traditionally published, just like when you buy a house, you wouldn't buy it yourself, you would get a real estate agent. So similar to that, if you
So you
want to
got
get correct, literary agent. So then I don't have to make the decision of whom should it go to, because if the agent is good at her job, she should already have a list of publishing houses in her mind, which would be a good fit for this. Because, big 5 publishers are not going to take, manuscripts directly from authors. They only work with literary agents. So my agent did a really good job figuring out which publishing houses were,
How did you
interested
find
in this kind. I found the agent through Twitter, I believe. At the time, Twitter was, really helpful. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it anymore, but, yeah. And you can also look at, there's a website called Manuscript Wishlist. Have you all heard of that? MSWL. Yeah, you can look that up. So it's a website where, literary agents update the kind of stuff they're looking for right now. So, if your timing is right, let's say an agent says, oh, I read this book last week about a domestic thriller or something. And if you have something that's exactly like that, that agent might be interested. So mostly it's, online searches are the way to go.
Thank you.
With Dutton, which is an imprint of Penguin.
Mm-hmm. Penguin Random House, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I was very fortunate to have multiple offers at the auction. So we had video calls with different editors. And then I kind of decided to see which editor would be the best fit, because, a book is not done when you get a contract for it. Like, that's just the starting point. You work on this book for years and years, and then you get an agent, and then you work with the agent for however period of time to polish the book, and then you sell it to the publishing house, and then the publishing house editor also has editorial feedback, right? I worked on it for almost a year after I sold the novel. So at this point, I have read it so many times that y'all couldn't pay me to read my own book, because I have had to go through it for so many times. But I mean, that's part of the traditional publishing process, that readers expect a certain level of polish in the books that are out there. So it takes a while.
What do you think your recommendation would be if you were to self-publish, just in terms to get that type of quality and feedback and editing? So you're kind of having some of that process, but perhaps still going through a different route.
Yeah, so I would definitely say to first start with writing workshops, just get, feedback from your peers. And then when you are comfortable, like Patrick was saying, right, when it's the 7th, 8th draft and you're comfortable sharing it with the outside world, maybe you can bring in an outside developmental editor, or I don't know what that would be in case of illustrations. That's not my area, but I'm sure you can look it up, and there would be some people who can help with that. But definitely you need some amount of like upfront investment to get these folks to kind of come in and give you oversight. And that's the way to make your book kind of stand out from all the stuff that's on Amazon.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I was thinking the same.
Yeah, and the good thing is that you do get to, once, if your hard work pays off, then you do get to keep a larger share of the profits, right? So for example, in traditional publishing, writers only get like 2% for each sale of the book. That's how the advance works, right? So if I sell like 3,000 copies, my publisher probably makes like $100,000. I mean, gross, not profit. And but the author would get like 10,000. So there are pros and cons, like I said, to each approach.
I have another question. I don't think, it sounds like you don't have a whole lot of free personal time, working and having a child. But when you're able to read, who are your favorite writers?
That's a great question. So I'm so tired of but I do love reading. That's how I got into writing in the first place. So in India, some authors which I grew up reading, which are very popular back there, are your John Grisham, Jeffrey Archer, Agatha Christie. These days, for contemporary writers, the last book that I really loved was, I don't know if you all have heard of it. It's called Night Watching. It's by Tracy. It was selected as the Jimmy Fallon book club pick, and it is a nail biter. It's about a mom who's trapped with her children. Have you all heard of it?
Mm.
No?
I
Okay.
have, yeah.
And then there's this science fiction kind of book, which is called Annie Bot. I really love that one. It's about this man who kind of takes this female robot to be his companion / help. And it's just, I love to read across genres. Mystery thrillers are my favorite genre, but I like to kind of read as many genres as I can.
Well, thank you.
What did you guys read as your last book club pick, or what have y'all been reading recently? I want to walk away with reading recommendations too.
I'll show you what I just read, and I love this book.
Oh, okay. And is this a thriller?
By the president of the Spokane Authors Association, Nathan Bennett, which is not his real name, it's his pen name. And he is the current president, just was elected this year. And, this is a little bit of a historical novel, and I'm not very much into historical novels at this time of my life. We have stages, and at this stage I didn't think that I would probably like it, but I decided to open it and I couldn't close it. I have it to the end. I really like this book. So that's my latest favorite. The one I'm gonna read next is this one from one of the members of our group. And then right now I'm in the process of reading this one, also from our group, which is a totally different, it's not a novel. It's more of the inspirational kind of reading. And I'm not into inspirational reading, but I like it. There are some parts of it that are very insightful, I would say. So that's my answer to your question.
Awesome. Thank you.
One that another group that I'm in has read is The Word is Murder by Anthony Horowitz.
I've heard of him. Yes, he's very popular. Is it good?
I liked it. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Crystal, what was that book you were saying you liked just now? She put a note in the.
I think it's in the chat.
I don't think.
Yeah, so it's called A Certain Kind of Starlight. I actually just got an arc of it and powered through it in like 2 or 3 days. It's not the kind of thing that I would normally pick up, so I didn't have like huge expectations. But there's a lot of like family dynamic and sort of secrets uncovered and like class distinctions and stuff. Like I guess the premise is that it's two sisters, and each chapter is told from their each perspective. One of them was raised very high class and one of them was not, and they're half sisters because of an affair that had happened when, you know, they were teeny tiny. So there's all this crazy drama that spirals out. And it takes place in the South. So there's a lot of, you know, bless your heart. Um, and a lot of it's very silly at sometimes. There's a little bit of romance. It's very sweet, very wholesome, but also there's all that tension from the family drama, which sounds a lot like kind of how you were describing your own book. So it's not a mystery or thriller, but you might enjoy it.
Yeah, that definitely sounds right up my alley. A story about two sisters with drama. That I should put that on my reading list. Thank you.
I read a lot of nonfiction, but and I won't go into the long thing about it, but I'm very fond of James Comey's. This is his second book, Westport. And
Have you already finished?
oh yeah, he's
Yeah.
yeah, he's he writes well because he was with the government, of course, because he's that James Comey, and so he's very knowledgeable. But he writes very, very well written. Um, they are suspense thrillers. They're actually, he calls them a crime novel because it's not based on as much tension as you might expect in a thriller. But he has wonderful characters, and the character that he uses in both the first book and this one is a woman, and she is a sort of into investigating things, and it's just he's really a good writer if you have any interest in somebody that knows what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm. Sounds interesting.
Can you hear me? I
Yeah.
have no picture. It's Claudia. So the book club that I run over in Rathdrum just finished a nonfiction biography of Elizabeth Parkhurst. He was born in the 1860s, and it was an eye-opener because we didn't know, I didn't remember that women had no rights in the 1800s in America and probably the world. The husband gets everything, and you could be put into an insane asylum if you disagreed with him, and that's where she spent 9 years of her life eventually, but she fought it and got rights going for the Americans. So it was a good read. But next month we're reading Something in the Water, which is Catherine Stedman, and that's a thriller. And so I've already read it, and I know that the group will enjoy it. So I would recommend that. It's just a page turner. So
Yeah, I think that was a Reese Witherspoon book club pick, if I'm not mistaken, Something in the Water. And it has a
yes.
great twist at the end.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
good choice.
And opening the chapter and finding out how deep you have to dig a grave,
Yeah.
it makes you start wondering about life and what's going on. So
Yeah.
it was good.
That's good.
And I have yours on my list of books for reading for future possibilities for the club, because books to have
Thank
the
you.
girls read. So thank you. I've enjoyed your talk.
Thank you.
And Michelle says in the chat, I recently read Fluke, where I know why the winged whale sings. Christopher Moore, he's funny.
Yeah.
Good and unusual, kind of sci-fi. Yeah, he's a quirky kind of, he's pretty neat. And what was it? Crystal says, I love Christopher Moore. Okay, yeah, you should. He's a good writer. And now we're all going to love Nishita because she's a good writer too. Anywho,
Yes.
Patrick.
I have a question about writing for Nishita, and then anyone else wants to weigh in, I'd really appreciate it. Forever, of course, I believed that head hopping was just simply unacceptable. Then I ran across a novel or two, and well-regarded novels where the author did some of it. And as I was writing this current novel, I thought head hopping would be helpful because the two or three people in a scene are trying to outwit each other. Now you can get around head hopping by having the POV be one person and then the narrator talking about the other people's reactions or thoughts. But I tried it both ways throughout and I kind of like head hopping. I'm wondering, does everyone just say absolutely not? It just is too distracting. What are your thoughts?
So I do think that for every writing rule, there are instances where you can break them and get away with it. So nothing is set in stone. But in general, when it comes to head hopping, I think the concern is that it should not get too confusing for the reader. So if you can manage to get it in a way wherein the reader is not going, huh, because when you're writing in a close third person or even a first person, you're putting the reader really in the character's shoes, right? So the reader is supposed to be completely in sync with what the character is doing. So to go from one character's inner thoughts to completely different characters' inner thoughts in the same page can be a bit disorienting. If you want to kind of, keep this page turning, these people are trying to outwit each other, you might end up breaking that. One suggestion would be if you could break that into separate POVs so that it doesn't happen in the same page. If it happens in alternate chapters, that could also be a way to ratchet up the tension. But I'm not saying either way that it's not doable. I don't think anybody would look at it and go, oh, this is a deal breaker. I don't think that's the case. Like sometimes it just comes to a matter of personal taste. Some people really don't like first person point of views, the one that I did this, yada yada. But I've seen popular novels use it and get away with it. I stick with my third person, but definitely if you feel confident, go with your instinct. There's no writing rule that you cannot break.
I like
Patrick,
that rule that people said, just don't let it be a distraction. It's a good one.
yeah. For example, this book that I mentioned, the doctor is the head hopping, but he does it in chapters.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
And at the beginning, it was a little bit difficult for me, but then I got used to it. And I actually even liked to go back and verify who exactly that person was, because it helped me to make connections, because he's talking about different generations of the same family. And so it has to be like this, but he managed to do it that it wasn't a big distractor.
Okay.
And you have to limit the number of characters. Yeah, like you don't want like 10 characters, having their own POVs.
You're right. And he limited it to, I think, mostly 6. So you can actually manage. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and one last tip on that topic, like if you're gonna do that, we have to just make sure that each character has a distinct voice, because I've seen readers complain about, there are chapters, but then if readers have to go back to figure out who is this, if they all start to blend and sound the same, readers don't like that. So if you're gonna do multi-characters, you just have to make sure that they all have a very distinct voice.
Right.
One thing I was going to add too that might help you, I don't know, you might have already thought of this, but sometimes it can also be really helpful to tap into body language. Like if you're in a scene where you want to show like a character is saying something, but maybe perhaps thinking something different, like you can give subtle hints through body language, especially if it's a conversation where it'd be very hard to split it up into different chapters or different sections or bounce around a lot. This could be a very good tip to kind of add a different layer to that conversation that shows them trying to outwit each other.
Good. Thanks.
Honda has unmuted. Ta-da! Does that mean you want to say something?
I just feel like the odd man out here because I write fantasy, very much kind of the YA, NA fantasy stuff. And it's very popular in that genre to head hop kind of, but it's point of views. And that's the big thing is you I can't pronounce your name very well.
It's okay, Nishita. It's okay.
Nishita. You really have to have very specific, you have to really let people see the personality and be different from one person to the other. And it's best if you can put them in separate chapters so that it makes it clear to the reader that you are now with this person and going along. My daughter and I are writing a book together, and I'm writing one character and she's writing the other. And then we're going to end up merging together because there's a bigger overall line arc in it. And it's kind of close into your writing. It's kind of a detective story, but it's all fantasy. So on a whole nother planet, and there's kind of a whole twist to the whole thing. So yeah, we're gonna do, I write a chapter, she writes a chapter, so that you know you're jumping from my character Andrel and her character Arbor, and we go back and forth because my character is actually kind of like the police officer and her character is the assassin. And so you get to get these two perspectives as you go. And then it'll be interesting. We've got plans for it, but to merge them together is going to be interesting. But again, we're still going to have his perspective, my perspective, back and forth, just to make it easy enough for the reader to follow what's going on. So that seems to be the best way. And that's the way most of the fantasy that I read, because that's, I pretty much read in my genre. Occasionally dip my toes somewhere else. I have like 13 books stacked that I need to read still. I'm currently in Florida though, so I can't pick them up and show you what they are.
Well,
They're a long ways away. So, but yeah, that's what seems to work the best, or at least that's the stuff that I've read. Sarah J. Maas does that. She goes from, and she has 6 to 8 characters where you have their perspectives, but she's really good at developing each of their voices. So you know, even without her saying who it is, who's talking and where you're coming from. So that helps a lot. So my 2 cents worth.
By
she
the way,
doesn't
that's
talk a
such
lot in these meetings, but she does bring up neat points.
that's such a fun mother-daughter activity, by the way, writing a book. That's really cool. There's mother-daughter murder night or something, this really popular Reese's book club picks that was also written by mother-daughter pair. I hope I get to hear about your book in the future. And I think fantasy with mystery is a hot genre right now. So definitely, yeah, good luck with your novel. I've heard of the book Station Eternity. Have you heard of that? It's about somebody trying to solve a mystery on another planet. So it sounds exactly like what you're working on. So awesome.
Well, we're kind of creeping up on our done time here. I don't want to overwork Nishita because I realize that, you've got a little one to get back to for one thing. But we've just had a wonderful time. Is there any last minute question or comment anyone would like to make before we sign off?
Just thank you, Rashida, for your time and your perspective.
Yes, thank you.
Very fun.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you so much for
Linda,
setting
would
aside
you
the
put her
time.
book in the top comments though? Would you put her book in the chat so that I can save the chat so that I can go, because I'm interested in reading her book. So,
Yes, and I don't like the sales part of it, so I would not ask y'all to buy my book or spend money or whatever. Like, I don't want to be that person. However, if you can ask your local library to add a copy, that would be the easiest way. So if you guys don't mind, can I post like the book information that you would need to request your library in case, if y'all have
Oh,
get a
sure.
chance?
It's
Thank you.
I put the title in, The Night of the Storm. And I want to, while you're doing that, I want to ask you, Nishita, because I almost forgot. I think this is on, what do you want to call it, a double entendre? But it's the night of the storm, so there's a hurricane, but there's the night of the storm in the residence, because this is a storm between these people in this family. And so I kind of think that's kind of neat that you got that in there. It's yeah, ties it together.
Yeah, thank you. So I've posted the information in the chat. Thank you all for, inviting me to your
Thank
little
you.
club. I had such a
It's
great
been
time.
wonderful. I knew you were going to be fun. This is just, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to everyone who came today. And
Thank you.
Have fun this weekend. Bye-bye.
bye.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks.